and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we have a good show for you tonight. This is the show that didn't happen. We tried to have Thiago on a few weeks ago, and it just didn't happen. We had software updating in the background, which caused a terrible mess. No one could hear the guests. No one could hear Alejandro when he joined us. All that is fixed now, so we're moving on. I want to thank our supporters, and you can support the show for just $2 or more a month. All that information is on podcastufo.com. The first hour is always free. The full show, 2 hours, you can listen to if you support us, or if you watch live or listen live. You can watch live on YouTube every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or you can listen to the whole show as a podcast on the Dark Matter Digital Network, and that's every Thursday from 10 p.m. to midnight. And Alejandro, how you doing?
I am well. I'm here at UFO Congress headquarters, and we're in a transition. The background, again, is super boring. I'm sorry I've had these boring backgrounds lately for you. However, not like Thiago. When he comes up, he's got aliens back there and books, some really cool stuff. But we're going to be changing some stuff up, so I'm going to be two locations that I'll be doing this from, and I'll have some better backgrounds here soon.
Yeah,
buddy.
I know you had your aliens in the background and the open minds thing and all that stuff. So I'll have a open mind set and then a UFO Congress one, depending on where I'm at on Wednesdays, and so we'll have good stuff. Well, this
for you.
is the only.
I'm working on it.
This is the only way you can do this show now at the time live, right? I mean, this is your home office, basically, your home studio.
It is. Yeah. It is. So, although you never know, I mean, things are so dynamic that you never know. I may be doing this from the Open Mind Studio again. That's such a fun place to do this from. But, yeah, currently I'm at the home office, which we're fixing up. It'll be better soon.
All right. So what's going on this week?
So what's going on? Well, the first thing is the eclipse.
Yeah.
So I had a story where I compiled some information about the eclipse on Monday. And, of course, it was a total eclipse for some people. But there were some funny quotes out there for people who did stories or were interviewed about stories for the eclipse and UFOs. But I do want to say this one weird fact about the total eclipse. You are probably aware of this, that the sun is actually larger than the moon. Did you know that?
400 times or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, then, so why does the moon perfectly cover the sun, like perfectly during a total eclipse?
Because it's about 400 times further away than the sun?
That is exactly correct. So the sun is 400 times larger, but it's also 400 times further away. But doesn't that seem awfully coincidental?
It is, and I know they say the moon is moving, slightly, but it's going to take probably a million years before it'll be a different, situation during the eclipse. We don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. But it's the total eclipse did this nice little swath right through the country. And I've seen some pictures online and some video. It's really something.
So, pretty funny. So, some people think that the aliens brought the moon from elsewhere, and that's one of their pieces of evidence. Of course. But it is a pretty weird coincidence that makes that happen. So, of the UFO quotes out there, Nick Pope's was the funniest. So the Daily Express interviewed him, and he made some pretty funny announcements. He did say that there'll probably be a lot of UFO sightings, because there usually is. But one of the things that he also said is that, here's his quote, "Sadly, there's a dark side." He's British, if you're not aware. He was an investigator of UFOs for the Ministry of Defense. He's been on your show, I'm sure. He's on mine occasionally. But he says, "Sadly, there's a dark side, pun intended, to the eclipse. Such events bring out the crazies, and I confidently predict that there will be an upsurge in nut jobbery at the time of the total eclipse. I've already seen predictions that the world will end, along with suggestions that we'll see more sightings of Bigfoot, demons, and any manner of other weird stuff."
Well, was he right? I know the end of the world, I'm pretty sure
he was
it's
somewhat
not.
right.
Yeah.
Well, like I commented, I suggested that the aliens brought the moon, just pointing out that 400 by 400 thing that we talked about. However, there were some weird claims, but thus far I have looked at the sightings because, of course, I wanted to do a story on any good eclipse sightings out there. However, all of them that I've seen, I think, are birds, bugs, or lens flares. Lots of lens flares that people think are weird, but they just don't realize that when you're aiming your camera at the sun, even if that's your phone, it's bouncing around on the lenses and everything, and so it's creating all of these artifacts. So lots of people are getting these kind of reflections of the sun inside of their cameras and thinking those are anomalous, but they're not. But the funnest piece of nut jobbery, I think, and I don't know if you've seen this, but you can see this on my story about the eclipse. I saved it for posterity because it's so cool. But Google created this little graphic when you went to the Google site on Monday where you see aliens kind of bouncing the moon off of their heads in front of the sun, kind of suggesting that aliens bounce the moon around, creating an eclipse. For fun, of course. That's not how it's created, but it's a cool little graphic. That was my funnest nut jobbery of the eclipse.
Well, if Google did that, then it's most likely true that the aliens did put the moon there. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. That's a very good point. I mean,
it's online.
So, check that out. Check out the story to see the Google evidence that Martin has taken to heart and has convinced him that aliens brought the moon here.
Yeah. No, that was...
So there's the eclipse.
Cool.
Yeah, super cool. So if people do get to, I didn't go anywhere to see the total eclipse, and I'm kind of disappointed. We're busy with all of this stuff going on, but it would have been so fun to camp somewhere and experience that, and I'm kind of bummed that I haven't. But someone did say, because we talked about this, and I talked about how I was bummed about that. Someone did send me a link of other opportunities we will have in the future to do that. So, and we don't have to wait as long as, 70, 80 years or something like some people have mentioned. So it will happen again. So if you didn't get a chance to experience that, we'll have that chance again. Now, how significant was it, the coverage where you were? Did you have a fun experience? Was it just kind of...
No, I didn't have a good setup, so I didn't have a chance to look at it long.
Yeah.
However, my son, just 40 miles away or so, got a really good picture. I saw that you saw that. I posted on Facebook.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But we were out of the swath, the total area, quite far in Maine.
Yeah.
But it did come across, I think a little more than half of it. But if you had the glasses, those were the best things to use. Now, when you're talking about, about people get another chance to experience that. Is that in another country or in the United States?
No, it looked like, I didn't look at it thoroughly. I just received the email not too long ago, so I can't tell you much about it. But it looked like even in the United States we'll have chances to experience that again relatively soon.
Well, the thing that was unique about this is only the United States saw this eclipse.
Yeah.
And it just went right across. So there are I forget how many people gathered in Oregon, but it was a huge crowd to see it there.
Oh, yeah. It was like Burning Man. It was like this, city. Hopkinsville was another place in Kentucky where there was a famous, UFO an alien kind of encounter out there. Yeah, so cool stuff.
Yeah, great.
But I do have another cool story to talk
sure.
about.
Oh, yeah, we've got plenty of time.
We've got time. So this is cool. This is something new. So Sputnik International had this story, and I wasn't aware of this case, but I did find out other people were aware. And this is a Yugoslav general who says in 1975 they chased around a UFO a couple times, and that this UFO they saw several times. A really interesting story. So I guess this originally came out, and Billy Cox luckily had written about it. He's another UFO blogger. Although I don't think he's blogging about UFOs anymore, but I did link to his story, which is really cool. So in a book in 2011 from this gentleman who was part of the 172nd Aviation Regiment of the Yugoslav Air Force, he wrote a book about this regiment. And one of the people he interviewed, and it's extremely difficult to say this guy's name, Djurjevic, I believe is how you say his last name. I'm not going to attempt the first name. Maybe I will. Vonimir, something like that. But anyway, he was the head of this group. And among all of the things they talked about in the book, they dedicated a chapter to this UFO sighting and experience that they had in 1975. So it began in January of 1975 that during their night routine, their night flights, 50 minutes after takeoff, like almost clockwork, they said, they would see this light orb, this light. It would flash different colors. It was very visible. Not only he would see it, but some of the other pilots would see it. And eventually, one time flying past, he decided, I'm going to go check this thing out. Because they just kind of took note, but they didn't, surprisingly, make a big deal out of it. I guess it didn't show up on radar. But the one time he decides to go check it out, he turns and heads towards the object, and boom, it's gone. And it's not there anymore. However, they did see the object again. So he decided to kind of try to trick it, trap it, or hunt it down. But also, they were suspecting that perhaps it was foreign. It was some sort of monitoring device, maybe from the U.S. or something like that. So what he decided to do, he and another pilot, another jet, took off. And then soon after, a couple more jets took off. Luckily, he was in charge of the regiment, so he can do what he wants. So they didn't tell anybody they were doing this, and this was on purpose. They didn't want to communicate with anybody. On the off chance, I guess there was a spy in the group. But the other thing, they didn't want to communicate over radio about what they were doing, just in case their radio was being monitored. So they took off kind of in two different directions so they can kind of zoom in on this thing if it showed up. Sure enough, it showed up. They headed towards it, and it disappeared. Well, it returned. And during this experience, they eventually did get, I guess, talk to the base while they were doing this and trying to chase it. So there were a couple Soviet MiGs that were sent from Belgrade to chase this thing because those things were much faster. They were the fastest thing they had access to. But even these jets, which were supersonic, could not catch this UFO. It just disappeared. And I guess while the Soviets had flown out, that was the only time that the object was caught on radar for a period of time, but it didn't help because they just disappeared. Wow. So that was their experience. They land. The general tells his colleagues, and this general is a big deal. He actually was formerly the Air Force and Air Defense commander at one point. And he said there were a lot of people that were asking questions about their experience and were interested in it. However, there was a lot of people making fun of them over this whole thing as well. And so he said he decided it was so much of a headache and a nuisance, people making fun of him, and it didn't seem to pose a danger that his orders were to ignore it. So he said the last time they saw it was on February 12th. And luckily, Billy Cox, this wasn't something he told Sputnik, but Billy Cox had a detailed translation of what happened on this last occurrence. But the last occurrence happens. Everybody, I guess, at the base sees it. And they're saying, what is this UFO? Should we go see it? Should we go check it out? And he's like, no. He's totally ignoring it. And people are like, finally someone came to him and said, look, there's over 100 men who see this thing. Why are you saying you're not seeing it? And he said that he, in very loudly, told everybody, there's nothing going on. There's nothing there. Ignore it. Get back to work. And that was it. That was the last time they experienced it. And he told everybody that because he just didn't want to deal with the headache of it all, which is something that we hear. I've heard from people saying that. I mentioned a story of a Navy radar tech that I knew. And he worked on the DEW line in the 60s during the Cold War. And, this is kind of the edge of where we go to watch the Russians. And his radar could go up into the sky quite a bit. And they would detect, quick-moving things. In fact, his name was Franklin Carter, and they called him Carter's contacts because whenever they saw one of these things zipping around, they would call Carter up and say, hey, what's wrong with our radar? Fix it. And they would say, well, there's nothing wrong. And so they called him Carter's contacts. Well, they got a bunch of heck for reporting it, people making fun of him and all of this stuff. So he finally got a chance to ask some of the other radar techs, aren't you experiencing this? Aren't you capturing these things? And they said, yeah. And he asked, well, what are you doing about it? And they're like, nothing. Are you kidding? We're not going to report something like that. We'll go through what you've gone through, and it'll be a nightmare. So they just didn't report them. And, John Alexander is one of the guys who kind of talks about this, that there's a lot of reasons that, people in the military and stuff kind of push these things under their carpet at times. And a lot of them are just kind of, he calls it even ignorance or, kind of just human failings, and that they're embarrassed. This happens with pilots and police officers. I'm sure you've heard this too. Just people don't want that sort of notoriety and they don't want anything to do with it. So they say, hey, I'm not going to talk about this experience.
Wow. Now, I wonder if they saw, like with the radar, if they saw, like any unusual speeds or anything like that didn't make any sense.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that sort of detail. He just said they captured it. Once the MiGs got in the air, then they were able to capture it on radar, and that was the only time they were able to capture it on radar. He didn't explain what they did, but all he said was essentially that they outmaneuvered the MiGs. The MiGs couldn't catch this thing either.
Wow. Amazing, huh?
Yeah, really cool story. So we've got that at openminds.tv so people can read it with links to the Billy Cox story and the Sputnik International story. But you don't even have to go there because I just gave it all to you there in the one story.
Now, is Billy Cox, he's the one in Florida, am I thinking right?
Yeah, he was with the Sarasota Herald Tribune.
Right.
That's what it was.
He was a really good, thorough
he had a
writer,
UFO
too,
blog
right?
with him. He was great. He had done some things because he really was dogged about getting interviews with officials and stuff when things happen. And sometimes he would get those interviews. So he was a great resource for once in a while, coming up with a kernel of information that others weren't able to get. And his stories were a lot of fun. But I guess he had some sort of falling out with the paper, even though he had done it for many, many years. And so he stopped doing it. I tried my hardest to get him on my podcast, but he just didn't want to do it. But yeah, a lot of us who really have been into this for a while really admire his work.
Yeah, I know. I sent him an email one time and never heard back from him. I tried to get him on. And speaking of that, Nick Pope has not been on my show. Yeah, I know. I contacted him a number of times, and each time he will tell me that he only does a certain few shows, yours being one of them, and that's it. So you're going to have to. You're going to have to get him on my show.
Well, when you say stuff like the moon's brought here by aliens, he probably thinks you're a nut job.
I saw it on Google.
Yeah, I know. It was on the internet.
Has to be
so
true.
it has to be real.
Yeah. All right, Alejandro, thanks a lot. And hey, real quickly, tell the audience you're going to Budapest.
That's right, Budapest.
So that's next week.
I like to say it like that with some kind of weird accent. I'm not sure if it's even a real accent. But
it's not Budapestian, no. I don't think so.
Get your ass to Budapest. Actually, it is that accent and saying is actually appropriate because it's for Mars. I'm going to Mars, and Mars happens to be in Budapest. So sometimes I get to do these trips and stuff, and I write on Huffington Post, and sometimes on Open Minds if I can get people to talk about UFOs. I do these press trips about science in Hollywood, and there is a Mars television show. It's on National Geographic, actually, and some of you might have seen it. Really cool because it's kind of like Band of Brothers. If you remember, Band of Brothers kind of had, at the beginning and the end, they had interviews with real people. So it was a little bit of a documentary in there at the beginning, kind of bookending the drama. And so this series is about our first trip to Mars. And it's very based on science and everything. And they have NASA and other scientists, Elon Musk is in a lot of it, talking about, their progress and what they're doing to get to Mars. And then the show is dramatizing, our first time we get people on Mars and the challenges and what it would be like. Really cool show. So the first season has already aired, and they're working on the second season, so they're ready to promote that. And that's why they're bringing some of us, myself included, to Budapest for a few days to spend a couple days on the set. It's the Martian set out there. And so I'll be on Mars, and I'll be tweeting, and I don't use Instagram much, but I should, and this one will definitely be photolicious, so I'll use my Instagram, but also Facebook. I'll be sharing pictures and stuff about my Budapest Mars adventure.
That's so awesome. So I know you'll be heading back the day of the show that we have on the 30th, so we probably won't hear from you, but you'll be the
it's all-day
week.
travel. I think I land at around 3:30, so it'll be difficult for me to do the show with you.
No problem. We'll see you the week after. All right. Well, you have a great one. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So our guest is Thiago Luiz. I'm going to get it wrong. Ticchetti, and he is almost like the Richard Dolan of Brazil, and it's great to have him on again. We tried to have him on a few weeks ago, and it didn't work out, and we're so glad that he was able to come back on. Welcome to the show. Thanks for thanks for being on. And
thank you very much.
And thanks for your patience. This time, everything is working just fine, so we shouldn't have any trouble at all. So. I know you're shaking your head. You never know. Yeah.
Never know.
So could you tell the audience a little bit about your background? You are in Brazil. You have lived in a few different places in the world. But what sparked your interest in the UFO topic to begin with?
I'm living now in Brasilia, Brazil's capital. But I'm from Rio de Janeiro. I was born in Rio de Janeiro, and my father was a Air Force pilot, so we moved a lot in Brazil. I live in Natal, is Rio Grande do Norte state. Live in Santa Maria, is a Rio Grande do Sul state, and Rio de Janeiro, and now I'm living in Brasilia. Well, I started to get into the ufology since I was a kid. I think when I learned to read, I started to read comic books like Spider-Man and UFO magazines that we had here in Brazil. And in 1982, I had my first and only sighting. I saw a red sphere coming from the sky and then fade away and then rise again, get stronger and bigger as a red color, and make this movement and speed away from the space to the space. And from now on, I get into the ufology very, very serious. First, reading a lot, and from my 70th birthday, I start to research in Brasilia as well.
Have you done any research in any other countries, or do you just focus on Brazil?
No, just in Brazil. I like to read and study all the cases all of the world, but to be able to make us in local investigation just in Brazil.
So there has been some pretty amazing cases over the years. Starting coincidentally, I was looking online. Starting in 1947, same as Roswell. It seems like that's when a lot of the sightings started. The one that has intrigued me, and I remember watching a documentary on it. And by the way, can you pronounce your name so we know the right way to pronounce your name, please?
It's Thiago Luiz Ticchetti.
Okay, boy, did I ever get that wrong. I'm sorry about that. So I'll get this one wrong too. In 1997, there was a Uruganda Hollanda. Did I get that even close? He was a pilot, a retired pilot, parachutist that had a sighting earlier in the Amazon, and they found him dead. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, it's back in 1977. Major, back at the time he was a captain Wirangé de Holanda. He was assigned to investigate some sightings in Colari City in Pará State. And he had a crew from militaries from Brazilian Air Force that for 3 months they studied the sightings that was happening in Colares. The sighting was called the chupa-chupa phenomenon because the lights shot some lights in people's shoulders and necks and arms, and the mayor of the city asked for help to the Brazilian Air Force, and then they sent Captain Holanda to investigate it. It was amazing. It's an amazing case in Brazil that we have photos and we have official reports, but we are still looking for the films because they shot some films.
Now, how long of a time was that going on for?
Well, the official investigation of the plate operation, this was the name of the operation, started in October 1977 to the December of the same year. But now we are sure that when the Brazilian government stopped it to investigate the sightings, we are sure that we have U.S. military in Amazon investigated until 1982. So 5 years later, they kept studying the sightings.
Now, did this take a real toll on him? I mean, I know that there was speculation that he may have committed suicide, and this may have been related to it. Was there an investigation ongoing about that as well?
Well, he has some psychiatric problems, and he had depression, and he committed suicide. It's simple like that. He was not murdered. He was not poisoned. He just committed suicide as well.
But there was the UFO case. Did it take a toll on him? Is that what I'm understanding? In the documentary, they made it sound like this led to a suicide. Now, that may have been over-exaggerated. But what do you know about that part of it?
No, I think there's nothing to do with that. After he gave he was the first person to give the documents to Brazilian ufologists. But since then, we got more than 4,000 pages of official documents.
Wow.
Of the Brazilian government, and a lot of them about the plate operation. I don't think that's his suicide and the documents release it, or that he released it, has something to do with the suicide. I don't think so.
Well, that may have just been to make the documentary more interesting. They probably, made that angle toward it. But so the case was very interesting and never solved. Was when you said there were beams of light, or did you say did it actually injure people?
Yes, and 2 people got killed because anemia. When they got shot by the beam, the people got anemia, and we just had 1 nurse in the city to take care of 2,000 people in the village. So as we know, officially 2 people died because anemia, because was hit by the beam, but we are sure that probably many more people had died because of that, but we never know.
Do you know what the effect was? Were they saying it was similar to radiation poisoning or something?
No. When the people got hit by the beam, they lost blood. They lost some fluids. The people got very, very weak. And we are talking about a very inner city in Brazil in 1977. So we didn't have internet, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have commercial airlines. We didn't have it yet until nowadays. But to communicate it was very, very poor, the communication. And it's almost impossible to get informations on real time. So the people got sick, got ill, and just 1 nurse to take care of it. And as I said, 2 people died officially, but we are pretty sure that we have more people that got anemia and got weak and got ill and finally dead.
Wow. And would you say there was a dozen or more people that was involved in this sighting, or was it even a larger number than that?
Much larger. Just to have an idea, the crew of Captain Hollander was about six men, and the people of the village, like 2,000 people in a village, and almost everyone. I mean, I'm pretty sure that 100% that everybody in the village saw at least one time the lights in the sky. I'm not saying that all the villagers were hit by the beam, but everyone there back that time saw the lights in the sky.
Wow, that's something. Would you say that is one of the most important cases of UFOs in Brazil?
Yes, it is. It is. It's a huge case in Brazil that we're still researching it, because, as I said, we're still looking for more documents that we know that exist. We're looking for photos, and we're looking for the films, because Captain Hollander told A.J. Gevaert and Marco Antônio Petit, the Brazilian ufologists, that they were the first ones to know about the case, and the person that Captain Hollander asked to tell the story. So it was a huge case that had the official operation, a secret official operation, and we're looking for the films. We know they have films. They filmed UFOs, a very close range of UFOs, a huge UFO like the size of a football field, and very, very different shapes of UFOs as well.
Wow. When you say you're looking for the films, is that close to being a possibility that, well, first of all, you think they exist, but who would have those? Would the government have those of Brazil?
Well, the Captain Holanda gave all the films, all the material that he had, the original material. He makes some copies of the documents and photos, but the original documents, photos, documents, and films he gave to his superior, to the colonel that was in charge of that region. And my guess that or they lost the documents and the films, or they gave to the U.S. militaries. I think so. The second option is more realistic.
Wow. And why do you think they would give it to the U.S.?
Well, in 1977, the Brazil didn't have much interest to have it. Why we have it if we don't do any type of research? And there's some kind of deal between the countries that I think that this kind of information in exchange to something else, we gave the information to a higher or a powerful country. In Brazil, the case Brazil is ally of United States. So in 1977, I think it was much more important give to USA the documents to keep it, because if we kept it, why are we gonna do it?
Right. Now, someone in our chat room wants to know if the Brazilians have the same cynicism about UFOs as found in the U.S. In other words, is it a taboo subject there as well? Yeah.
But to the Brazilian government, UFOs, it's a matter. We have such huge problems in Brazil, like economic, social, political problems in Brazil, that UFOs don't come up in a first sentence of the problem. So if we see a huge UFO crossing the skies over Brasilia, it's not more important that what our presidents say about politics, about the economy. So Brazil is not a country that pay attention about that.
I totally get that. As a matter of fact, in our country, there was speculation that if Hillary Clinton was voted in as president, that she was going to, dig deeply into the UFO topic. And I said a couple times on this show that, anyone that takes over the office of presidency in the United States is going to have the tiger by the tail and so many other things on their plate that's going to be way, way down on the list, unless there's, something, dramatically happening, or if something happens. But,
I agree.
And does your country work with any other countries? I know Chile is, on the same continent, and they're very open to the UFO topic, and they have that CEFAHA organization. Does Brazil ever do any type of work with them in any type of way?
Not with other countries. The Chile has an official group, a military official group, to research UFO. Uruguay as well, Peru as well. But Brasilia, but Brazil, we don't. We still used to have COANI and SICOANI, and we had the plate operation. But nowadays, there's no official research about it. In 2013, we had a meeting at Brazilian Ministry of Defense, It was the first time that civilian ufologists had a meeting with representatives of Army, Air Force, and Navy, including the Brazilian government, to create a kind of cooperation between militaries and civilians, civilian ufologists, to investigate the UFOs. Well, we have 2 meetings, but unfortunately, we changed our president. We had the impeachment into last year. So everyone that we know at the Ministry of Defense lost their jobs.
Wow.
Because we changed our president, so changed jobs. And we start from the zero again. We start from the beginning again. And as I said, we have a lot of problems in Brazil, and UFO is not one of them.
Right. Now, the country, that's the largest country in South America, isn't it? Isn't Brazil?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And what is is the population really high, or is it? It's not one of the really. Do you know the population size? How many millions?
200 million.
200 million. Wow, that's a lot. Wow.
Yes.
So, what would you say the sightings are like there? I know in America we have you can check with MUFON and Peter Davenport's site. There's a lot of sightings per year. Are there a lot of sightings in Brazil overall?
Yeah, we have a lot, but we don't have a database like MUFON and Davenport. We don't have it, and we need it. I'm co-editor of the Revista UFO magazine in Brazil, and we receive 5 to 10 emails per day from people that think that saw something unusual in the sky. So if you do the math, 5 a day, 306, 5 in a year.
Yeah.
We had almost 1,500 sightings per year. But I think it's much more than that, because as I say, Brazil is a huge country. We are the 5th largest country in the world.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, and we have regions in Brazil like Amazon, like Pará, like Roraima, Rondônia, that people saw UFOs every day, but it's so normal to them to see it that they don't report because it's normal to them, and second, to whom they're going to report. So we miss a lot of cases. We miss a lot of reports, and that's why we need a database like MUFON and Davenport to have.
So what you say that UFO magazine, we're getting maybe up to 5 emails a day. That's kind of a strange place to report, a UFO sighting. Well, not really. It's not really strange, but I mean, it's something that I would never think of if I saw a UFO, if I didn't know there was any other, places to contact. For instance, when I had a sighting, I called the police department. I didn't know who to call. So when someone goes online and looks to report a UFO in Brazil, what do they find?
Well, first of all, when you receive the report, we try to find some ufologists that we know that can look for the report and try to figure out what it was. And the people really don't have who to call, as I said. So they send an email or call to the office of the Revista UFO, or send email to me in my Facebook page or to another ufologist. But we're not able, in the most part of the cases, we're not able to be there and investigate it, because we have to spend money, our money. We have to spend time and have to spend efforts to make a very good investigation, and we don't have time and money for that. So many of the reports, the people just email us and call us, but we're trying to analyze photos and the films. That's all. It's very difficult to do a field research.
Right. I know that MUFON does get reports from all over the world, so I'm sure that probably some of them actually go to, some of them that originate in Brazil probably goes to them. But are there any, you just talked about the research and the money and all that. Are there, is yourself or any other colleagues of yours actually trying to do the research? I know it's a big country, but yeah. So it's only for a passion of it, right? I mean, it's no money involved or anything like that. Just a curiosity. Can you explain some of the cases that you've tried to investigate?
Yeah, the most case that I investigate was here in Brasilia. It's easy for me to do it. So here in Brasilia, I had investigated almost 22, 23 cases in 10 years here in Brasilia. And we have a good ufologist in Brazil, my colleagues, that investigate cases in São Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais. We have a huge case in Brasilia, like a Varginha case, and a Batuba, and many pilot sightings. We have this friendship with Brazilian pilots that they report their sightings to us, just to us, because they don't want to publicity. They didn't want to have their names on newspapers, because it's gonna be a problem to them. So I investigate myself here in Brazil 22, 25 cases, very interesting cases as well.
So when the pilots have a sighting, are you talking about commercial pilots or military pilots?
Both. My father was a Brazilian Air Force. My father-in-law was a Brazilian Air Force pilot. So I know many Brazilian Air Force pilots, and from Air Force and now from civil airways. And they know that I investigate UFOs. And when they know some sighting or a friend that had a sighting, they contact me and give me the contact and trying to investigate it.
Now, how does your family, for instance, your father, feel about you investigating UFOs? Is he open-minded to it?
Well, my father passed away many years ago when I was 19 years old. He passed away. Now I'm 42 now.
Sorry.
But he was no problem. He was the person that encouraged me to read about ufology. He loved it. He loves ufology. And he had the book Chairs of Gods, Eric von Däniken book. And he had a sighting when he was young. He was not pilot yet, but he had a sighting with my uncle, his sister. And he gave me all the opportunities. He gave me books to read it. And my father was a very open-minded person. My wife as well. My wife support me. My kids loved the subject. And my father-in-law as well. He gave me his testimony about his sighting for the first time, he told to someone, and he told to me, and I have a recorded of it in my YouTube page, and I think my family support me in all about it. No one called me crazy.
Right. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Now, does Brazil have any military type sightings? You know, you hear in the United States like White Sands, and you know, you hear about nuclear warheads, which I don't think Brazil has any. I'm not sure, but do you have like nuclear power plants there? You know, there are some nuclear power plant sightings, things like that. I mean, what I'm getting at, is there any like certain types of sightings that are really interesting along the lines of military or nuclear power plants or anything like that?
Well, we don't have military nuclear plants. Uh-huh. We don't.
Well, lucky you,
we
actually.
We have the technology of we have the atomic technology. We do have, but we don't build atomic and nuclear bombs or weapons. But we have interesting cases that occurred in Brazilian military bases. We have the case, the Night of UFOs, we call here Brazil, in 1986, where more than 20 UFOs were saw by crew on the ground, by pilots, by military pilots, and 5 jet fighters were sent to intercept the UFOs, and it was like a dog cat fighting to try to identification the UFOs. And we had cases in Santa Maria here in the Sul that a UFO landed in a base, in the middle of the base. We have cases in many cases where the militaries in a land saw UFOs over the bases. It's not common, but it's not rare.
Someone made a point on the message board that he wondered if pilots got together and the group and, you know, told their stories, like if they could get through their union, or, you know, I mean, I'm sure that Brazil has something similar to the FAA, the Federal Aviation, that we have. Is it just taboo across the board for pilots in every which way?
It is. When a pilot, commercial or military pilot, saw something in the sky, they have to make a report. But many of them never do, because if they do the report first, he had to go under a psychological tests, and he had to he not lost their jobs, but the people start to look to them like a crazy person. So is a huge taboo to the pilots, not retired pilots, but the actual pilots. They don't want to talk about it because they think that they're gonna lose their jobs. It's a very, very hard taboo here.
Now, I'm just wondering, like, if there were two, you know, a pilot and a co-pilot sitting together, they had a sighting and they could cooperate perfectly with each other, it's still an issue.
Well, they prefer look to each other and say, "What did you see?" "I see nothing." "Me too."
That's too bad. It's really too bad.
Yeah. But yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny. We have a lot of reasons in the United States why we understand why that's the way it is. You know, going all the way back to, you know, of course, Project Blue Book, That was part of their deal when the sightings came flooding in. They had to, explain them away to calm the people down. And then in 1953, there was the Robertson panel, which was all about, making humiliation out of UFO sightings to just, make them go away. Was there anything like that, as far as you know, in Brazil, the reason there's so much ridicule?
Well, we don't need a special project to do it. If a person come and say that they saw a UFO or an alien, all the media, if paying attention to his report, is gonna make a joke of him. Mm-hmm. That's 100% sure. That's why we fight. We have a stronger fight to encourage people to come to us, to ufologists. We don't need publicity. We don't want publicity. We just want to understand the phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And we need the people report to us what they saw. And many people didn't do it because they want to be criticized, ridiculous, and be called like crazy. So we don't need a special project to do it. We don't need it.
Now, what about in the United States? We have a lot of people that think they're being abducted. Abductees, or they call them now experiencers. What's the situation like in Brazil when it comes to that?
Well, the abduction phenomena is the same all over the world. Here in Brazil, we have a very, very good doctors that studied the case. I can name Gilda Moura, I can name Mário Rangel. They are very, very good professionals that study these abductions. In Brazil, we have a lot. We have, I think, United States, the population of the United States is much bigger than Brazil. But we have many cases of abduction in Brazil. And we have famous cases. We have Antônio Vilas Boas cases, that Brazilian from Minas Gerais that had sexual relationship with an alien being in 1957. So we have a very important case about the abductions in Brazil.
Wow, I had no idea. But it's the same thing, I'm sure. It's as far as the ridicule goes, it must be the same, I would think, or even more.
Yeah. Yes.
Because some people consider that the fringe part of ufology. Some people don't, but I'm talking about in the United States. So it is always interesting to hear, different countries, what's going on. I know when I had Klaas Svahn from Sweden, he says he may get 1 or 2 abduction cases reported per year. What about to the magazine? Do people actually report abductions to the magazine?
Yes, we have many reports, but I can tell you, 95% is we can explain. Mm-hmm. Explain as a lie, as imagination, dreams, and sleep paralysis, and something normal, let's say. But we have a 5% that. Let's say 20, 30 cases a year. That's very interesting, and we have to look deeply to understand what's going on.
How much of your time is taken up in the UFO topic? Most people, like myself, I have a career, and then I do this show, and another show when I can. So does this take up a lot of your time, your spare time?
Unfortunately not. Well, I work a normal job, 10 hours a day, and I prefer spend most part of my free time with my family. I have a boy with nine years old and a little girl with a 3 years old and my wife. I prefer to spend my most part of free time with them, and the rest of time I spend with my stuffs. But I do at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I see something about ufology, or reading a case, or reading a few pages of a book, or answering an email that I receive. If you do the math again, well, if they have 24 hours, 2 hours of ufology in my life per day.
That's pretty fair, and it's
well, but when I get a retirement, I'm gonna spend a lot of time, and I told already to my wife about that.
Yeah. So when someone is doing the work like you have to do to research cases, is this all done? I mean, you haven't personally gone to research something, have you? I'm thinking about Brazil, how large it is. Do you actually do some research, like feet on the ground?
Yeah. And my research, when I do my research, I have to do on a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, few times during the week. But the weekends is when I do my research. If I had a landing as well, for example, we have to go there immediately when we have some hard evidence. I try to do my best to be there as soon as possible. And the field research for me is a very important part of the UFO investigation phenomenon.
Right. Now, I know there was a trace case, but it was controversial whether it was a hoax or not, where in Brazil some UFO exploded and the witness picked up some residue. It ended up being magnesium or something like that. Do you know the case I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the Ubatuba case that happened in 1957 as well. We had this case that a UFO exploded over the beach, and some debris came, the most part of debris, down into the ocean, and some part of it fell on the beach, and some people got it. But it's a very controversial case because Andrea Simondini from Argentina, he claimed that he had a small piece of the UFO from Ubatuba, and Jacques Vallée, French ufologist Jacques Vallée, came 3 months ago. He went to Argentina and took a small piece of this debris to make analysis. I think the case is true. I think that really happened, but I don't think that we're gonna find some evidence, some debris nowadays. I think all that we had was used to make the research back the time, like the couple Lawrence Coral and Lawrence Coral and her husband, Jim Coral and Jim Lawrence. They took some examples from Olavo Pontes and destroy the example doing the research. So I don't think they're gonna find this evidence nowadays.
I know, there's one of the people I've had on my show in the past said, if there were so many crashes, why isn't there any, physical evidence? There have been some things brought forward. and it sure would be nice. It seems like if there was ever some hard evidence found, there's so many elements in the universe that we, are aware of. The only thing that could be different if it was extraterrestrial is the way it's composed, and alloyed or whatever to make something totally different. But it's really, when is magnesium found, it still could be extraterrestrial, and magnesium is what I'm getting at. It's awful hard to take evidence and prove that it's extraterrestrial. If it even if it was.
Yes, the Ubatuba debris. The analysis showed that magnesium was 99.9% pure. That was impossible to find in the nature, or impossible to build it in 1957. I don't think we can do it nowadays. But when we talk about UFO crashes and we talk about hard evidences, like touchable evidences, we have Roswell. We have Roswell in the United States. We have Varginha in Brazil. We have the Addlestone in England. So we do have this evidence. But when I say I mean we as human beings, we as military, because civilians, as you and me, we don't have it. But the evidence, the militaries have it.
Right. It's very possible. Last week's guest, MJ Banias, was on. I know you listened to the show. I don't know if you was able to catch that one in particular.
A part of it.
So his one of his theories is that he doesn't think they're extraterrestrial. He thinks they're something else, or he thinks that it's something that we kind of create, which I thought was interesting. I love to hear interesting views, whether I agree with them or not. In general, would you say that a lot of ufologists in Brazil think it's an extraterrestrial theory?
Yeah, I think the most part believe this way, but not my opinion. I'm very open-minded about it. We cannot say that they are from other planet because we don't have the proof. We cannot say that they can be ourselves coming from the future. And when I do my lectures, I give this example, like Back to the Future theory. We can come to the past, but we cannot change the past because it's gonna change the future. So these beings must can be extraterrestrial, can be ourselves from the future, can be from parallel universes. We cannot claim until we have the evidence, and that we don't have it.
Yes, I agree. And it's the question always comes up whether it's a skeptic or whether it's someone trying to debunk a case or whatever it is. But it does come up a lot is why is it so elusive? Why after all these years, going back to 1947 for modern ufology, going all the way back to that time, 70 years, and we still don't have the answer. Do you think the answer will come eventually, or do you think it's going to stay this elusive thing?
No, the answer is going to come in a way or another way. I think that we have a very difficult concept here. Many people ask me if the aliens are good, are bad, why, what's their agenda. Well, in my opinion, they are not good. If they were, they help us to to clean the planet, as for example, to stop disasters. If they were bad, they probably would try to kill us and conquer the planet. And what's their agenda? We don't know. In my opinion, they come to our planet, do what they have to do, and leave it. They don't want to come here to say, hi, my name is something like that, I'm from planet X, and I want to be your friend. No, they don't want it. No, not these civilizations that come to Earth. They just come here, do what they have to do, and leave it. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be disturbed. They want to make friendship. They just have come here, do what they have to do, and leave. And we have that imagination from Hollywood films and the human nature. Why they come? Why they didn't land in yards of the White House? Why they don't stay in the sky to everybody to see it? Because they didn't want it. I think it's very, very, very simple like that. And many people don't like to be simple. I think it's the answer now. They don't want to show up. Someday in the future, maybe we probably find them, and they found us, so let's say hi. Probably. Now, today, they just want to do what they have to do, period.
You know, I've brought this up a few times on this show. About 25 or 30 years ago, I had an insurance agent come to my house, and we were in this conversation, and just a general conversation. At that time, I was not really into UFOs or anything. You know, I had a sighting not that long ago, back in 2006, that really got me interested in it. But prior to that, I just, I listened to, a few things and kind of, nonchalantly pay attention. Well, he told me that he was part of a secret military department while he was in Vietnam that was a branch of the Air Force that was studying UFOs in Vietnam. And I said, really? I had no idea, much about him, and I can't remember his name. I can't figure out how to get a hold of him. I'd love to try to reach out to him now. But anyway, he basically said that the government's closest theory, because I asked him why would they be here, and he said, basically it boiled down to is that we're being observed. That's all, and that's all that's what he claimed. That's all the government knew about it.
It's very reasonable.
I mean, that would only make sense for the fact that they are so elusive. If they were being observed, but they certainly aren't hiding. If that's the case, especially there's UFOs with lights, blinking lights, so they're not really hiding, and there's daylight sightings, and so what do you think about? Do you think that is a possibility?
Yeah, I do. But Martin, you have to, let me be clear, translating Portuguese to English. We have cars. We had cars back to the 40s, to the 80s, to the 90s. And our cars were getting technology. Now we have cars much better than we had 15 years ago. correct? And in parallel of that, we have many sightings, much more sightings, in my opinion, 20, 30 years ago than we have today. And many people ask me, well, yeah, in the 80s we had much more photos and sightings than today. Back the time, much more people saw UFOs in the sky, and nowadays we don't see it. Why? They are not coming to Earth? No. In my opinion, no. They're UFOs, they're machines. Game technology as well. They develop technology. Now I think that some UFOs, and I'm saying some because I believe that many civilizations of beings or extraterrestrial or parallels, worlds, something like that, are visiting our planet. So their technology got some was very development that nowadays they became invisible to our eyes. And I give an example. Last year, a crew of a helicopter in England filmed a UFO in a infrared camera. The UFO was side by side of their helicopter, and no one in the crew inside of the helicopter saw the UFO. Just the machine, just the camera, camera saw it. So I think that their technology are so much advanced than ours that they became invisible to our eyes. And you must remember that film called Predator. That alien had the camouflage.
Right.
I think they have this. I think the many UFOs have this technology, the camouflage. So we don't see it often because we can see it. They became invisible to our eyes.
And that's, a lot of people don't realize this, but we have this, this visible spectrum, which is, I forget exactly what it is, but we can only see certain, wavelengths. So it is there's a lot of things that are out there that we can't see, basically.
Yeah. I think that we are reaching a time that the UFOs would be invisible to everybody. They must be in the sky, but we can see it. All the UFOs, all the civilizations, that aliens, that beings that come to Earth to just watch. Just come here to watch, study our behavior or day by day, and that's it.
Right. Except when it comes to the possible abduction part of it, that part is a real mystery. I've had a few people on over the years where we talked about abduction cases, Jacobs and a few others. There's all types of speculation on that. The thing, that baffles me is why is the same person abducted over and over again, and that's, there's answers for that according to, the people doing the research. So, yeah, it's bizarre stuff. So now what about UFO flaps in Brazil? Are there any areas and times where there was flaps in a certain area?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of UFO flaps. We had in '82 over the south of Brazil and southwest. We have in '86. We had in 1991 over the central of Brazil, and the last one we had was in 2014, before the World Cup. in Brazil. We had it in the UFO crosses all over Brazil, from the Oiapoque, it's a city in the north of Brazil, to Ichuí in the south of Brazil. We had more than 200 sightings in 15 days.
That's amazing.
And yeah, in Brazil, Brazil is a very big country, so 200 reports in 15 days is a lot of things.
Right. Now, in current times, what type of craft, I'm not talking about lights in the sky, but let's talk about when people see some type of shape. Are they seeing the triangle that everybody's seeing? Are they seeing discs? What or cigars? What type of shapes are they seeing?
Well, in Brazil, triangle is not common. We hear say the reports. The most part of is like spheres, ball of lights. But we have a lot of flying like discs, like flying saucers, like discs. And we have some cigars. Is not common as well. But the the most cases are from spheres, ball of lights, and flying saucers, the classic flying saucers.
Right. Now here, there's a lot going on with what they call the orange orbs. Does anyone talk about that?
Yeah, we heard.
Yeah, you do hear that? Yeah. But triangles, you say, are not common. That's funny. It seems like there's quite a few triangles in the United States, and that's another kind of curious thing when it comes to sightings and crafts that people claim they see. When they see it in one country and not another, that just makes it the whole thing even crazier.
Yeah.
Why would they visit? Why would triangles visit this area and a different shaped craft visit that area? That type of thing. The sighting that you claimed that you had years ago, you said that was was it a red orb?
It's a red sphere.
Yeah.
Red sphere in 1982. Yeah, the red sphere.
And
it's a very amazing sighting. And I was with my brother and a few friends. I was 18 years of age.
Can you hold on just 1 second here? We have someone that's calling in. So we have someone calling in for a question. Hello, caller. Okay. You are live on the air, and why don't you tell us your first name and where you're calling from?
Hi, my name's Jonathan. I've called in once before last week, and my name's Jonathan, like I said, and I'm just wanting to speak about, because relating to the orbs that your guest was speaking about, and the orange orbs that you said that were quite prominent. I saw one of those in my mid-teens, but I've never really spoken about this before. I've never spoken about it to anybody, and I suppose I just wanted to explain the few experiences, short experiences that I have had, and what your thoughts are on them.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now, my first experience was when I was a child. I might have been like 7 or 8 years old, living at home with your parents, and I slept on the top floor, so semi-detached house, and a tiny village, maybe 100 houses on that cul-de-sac, and I was living on the borders between Sheffield and Huddersfield, and middle of the night, and everything was quiet, so everyone must have been asleep, and my curtains were drawn. So this one wasn't necessarily a UFO that I actually saw. It was more of an experience. But yeah, I opened my eyes, and seconds later, a bright light slowly rose up from underneath my window, and stopped for a few seconds and then rose back up and then glided back down, and it was gone. And that's the only one that actually scared the life out of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't close my eyes. I was scared stiff. Now, I've got a lot of experience in the music industry and with lighting. And if it was, say, for example, a torch, which shining it up, shining it down, that's fine. But that creates that would basically cover the whole window, because there's a garden and then there's a street behind it. So you couldn't really shine a light directly into the window. But again, that would create a fade effect around the edges if it was small, if the beam was small enough. But it wasn't. It was a solid white bar, and it was very close. It must have been, or it was a beam, I don't know. But there was no fade off at all, so it was a solid beam. And it, like I say, went from below my window up to the middle of my window, stopped, and then went up and then back down. So that was my first one when I was a child. I had one in my mid-teens, like I say, the orb, and it was quite interesting. That was sort of the thing that sort of really made me think. I was living in Liverpool at this time, as my family moved, and it was maybe it was on a winter's night. It was dark, so but people were still up, so it must have been about 8 or 9 o'clock, and I was looking out of my window. There were fireworks. And so it was near bonfire night, and and I saw from my left, it was a solid glowing orange orb, like a burnt orange, and it made absolutely no sound. It moved in a continuous direction from my upper left corner from behind the house, and continued slowly. I mean, it must have been, 10, 20 miles an hour. It's really slow. Quite, I wouldn't say large. It was maybe the size of, judging from what I was seeing, maybe the size of half a house or a house, maybe 30 or 40 feet above the rooftops, and it just carried on going slowly. I ran into my parents' bathroom. My daddy was having a shave, and I was like, come and see this, and yeah, he was like, no, I'm shaving, I've cut myself now, and then, yeah, and I ran back in, and I could still see it going into the distance, and that was the first time I ever saw an orb, and it was at night.
And how many years ago was this? How many years ago was this, Jonathan?
I was 15, and I'm 33 now, so it was 18 years ago. The last one was literally a few years ago. It was 2013, and it was broad daylight. It was cloudy-ish, so there was still breaks in the cloud. And I caught it by chance because I was walking up the stairs. I was living in an apartment, and I was walking up the stairs. There's a window at the top of those stairs, and I saw something move quickly, like really quickly. So I sort of mistook it for a bird. So, when you see a bird fly past your window, it was that speed, and because it was dark as well, the object, and it flew. Straight past, and it went it went straight, and then arced up into the distance. It must have been gone. It was gone up into the horizon, through the clouds. Well, as far as I could see, in maybe 15 seconds, and that was a metallic orb. solid because it was with the breaks in the cloud, the sun was reflecting off, so it was actually a metallic orb. And I watched that go into the distance, and yeah, that's the last time I ever saw a UFO. But then again, I really got into PCs and music production, sound engineering, so it's probably the last time I ever looked out of my window.
Do you have any feedback for him? Thiago?
Well, first of all, John, may I call you John?
Yes.
You're a lucky man. You saw 3 times a UFO. many ufologists never saw one. And
twice, and the other one was I couldn't say it was a UFO because obviously it was something. Obviously, it was something out of the ordinary that certainly stuck with me.
At least 2. Secondly, I was missing that accent because I lived in London. And I had all my British accent.
Well, I'm originally from Yorkshire, but I actually live about 20 miles from London. So yeah, I actually live in Kent. I live in Kent now.
Well, I live in Addlestone, in the south. I lived there for a year and a half.
Fantastic.
And your sighting is very, very interesting because the second sighting was a huge orb, the size of a house, isn't it? Is a orange. It's amazing. It's amazing. And what impressed me the most is that many times just one person saw it. We're talking about a huge orb, the size of a house, and just Jonathan saw it. Okay, it's night, but where are the people that didn't see the sky? Where is the people?
Well, maybe other people did see it, but I was 15, and I didn't. I just moved into the area. Didn't really speak to any of the other kids and stuff. So it was, it was sort of. I don't know if I'm the only person that saw it, but I'm the only person that I know that saw it.
But what's if someone else had saw it, probably you would heard about it because it was not a small UFO, small sphere. It's huge. And the media was get attention of that, but it's amazing sightings. And as I said, we have many type of UFOs, and these orbs are getting much. Is getting much space in the UFO sightings.
They certainly are. I'm seeing quite a few odd pictures of them and videos. I think the negative side is that there's so many YouTube sites and so much misinformation out there with CGI and incredibly blurry lights that could easily be planes or helicopters, and they are, after attention or just to spread misinformation. I think that's disappointing for the validity of people that see and have real experiences.
Yep. Hey, Jonathan.
So your position is perfect. It's perfect, Jonathan. It's perfect. We have nowadays internet, and the internet. We have YouTube, for example. We have in 100 films on YouTube. One must be real. The rest is a fake, or drone, or airplane, or something else. And your words are very correct.
Yeah.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much for calling in.
Not a problem. Thank you very much, and good to speak to you again.
Cheers, mate.
No worries. Have a very nice...
Yes. So actually, we want to make sure that when callers call in, I mean, that was nice to hear the sighting and everything, but we usually want questions. So if anyone wants to call in with questions for our guest, that number is 603-967-4030. So yeah, it's always interesting to hear about different sightings. Going back to Brazil and sightings in Brazil, what do you think, besides the ones we've already talked about, what do you think are some real outstanding cases that have happened over the years? Yeah.
In Brazil, we have Varginha case. Varginha case is the Brazilian Roswell. We had a UFO crash. We have 3 alien beings captured.
What year was this?
In 1996, in Varginha City. We had this case and 3 beings captured, 2 dead and 1 alive. And we had a cover-up, almost perfect cover-up from the Brazilian government, supported by the US military government as well. We know that the UFO and the beings were sent to USA. We know that because in those days, a special crew from NASA and on a market airplane from the United States arrived in Varginha airport, and we have not usual movement in the city. We had a military that died because he touched one of the aliens beings or one of the creatures. The case is still, we have a lot of information about the case, but as a plate operation, we're still looking for more. We're looking for the reports from the Brazilian army, because the Brazilian army took the aliens and sent to United States. And when we asked the Brazilian army, where's the reports, and they say, well, that's nothing happened. They blamed a person that had some physical problems, that he was the aliens that 3 little girls saw. But we know that it's a lie, and they're still looking for, and we're getting much more information about it.
Now, this wasn't the one that where they saw the beings, one of them in a tree, is it? Like climbed a tree or something?
No.
Am I thinking of something different?
No. Well, one of the beings was saw in a zoo for an old lady. One of the beings was took in a wood. They were captured in a wood using a net. And 3 girls saw one of the beings crouched in the side of a wall, and the creature had red eyes.
Yeah, it looked like the devil or something. They said.
3.
I did hear about this.
Yeah, and 3 balls in a head. So this case is an amazing case. It's a recently case, 1996. Well, Roswell happened in 1947, and just in 1976, Jess Marcel come to tell the story. So this case happened in 1996, and we're still looking for more information. And I think in this case would be as bigger than Roswell.
Now, wasn't there a documentary or a TV series like UFO Hunters or something like that did a show on this?
Yeah, we had several shows broadcasted by History Channel or Net Geo or Discovery Channel that showed this case, and but we don't have we do have, I think Bruce Maccabee wrote a book about the case, but it was 1996. We have much more information now, and I think we must have another book about the case in English to show the people out of Brazil that this case is real and very important case.
Right. Now, when the, I don't know if it was military or whoever it was that touched the supposed being, you said that they died. How long after, and what did they die from?
Well, he got sick. A week later, he touched the creature, and 2 months later, he died. The paper that said the cause of mortis said infection, generalized infection, and he was buried not in a normal coffin made by wood. His coffin was made by metal to not poison the land. What was that? Interesting. Why a person was buried in a casket made by iron? If he had just infection, why the worry to not poison or contaminate the land, the soil?
Wow.
And he told, before he died, he told to his family that he had touched the creature.
Oh, is that right?
And
wow.
His name was Shirazi, so there's Shirazi. And we still talking with his sister. And she said to us that it's true. He told us that he had touched the creature and he got sick, and then 2 months later he was dead.
Wow. Someone wanted me to ask about a cart, A-K-A-R-T. Do you know what he's talking about?
Car?
Okay. If you're listening, I think I'm just trying to see who it was that was asking. Mike in the chat room. Can you please describe the question you have over again on that? So someone was saying that there was some cave drawings in Brazil. Is that in the Amazon? That look like flying something, maybe UFOs or something? Are you familiar with anything about that?
Yeah, Amazon's bigger than is the size of almost the whole Europe. Amazon is huge. It's huge. And Amazon has a lot of mysteries. And some people say, and some people saw it, UFOs diving and rising from lakes and rivers in Amazon. Recently we found some evidence of pyramids in Amazon and caves in Amazon that the local inhabitants believe that are the home of people that come from inner world. And but as I said, Amazon is so you have to see Amazon from above to see what I'm talking about. You just when you fly over Amazon, you don't see the land. We just see the top of the trees. It's a very, very, very huge place, cover of the trees, and then we can see the land. So it's a perfect place to hide. It's very, very, very perfect place to hide.
Right, absolutely. And it stretches on and on and on, right. So let's see. Let's talk about we have about just over 10 minutes left here. So it goes fast, doesn't it?
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if anyone...
yeah, when it's good,
yeah,
goes
right,
fast.
right. If anyone would like to call in to ask our guest a question, that number is 603 967-4030, or you can Skype in at Marty Willis. That's MartyWillis. Either way, you can call in to ask our guest a question. Again, we have about 10 minutes left. Did you write a book? I'm sorry, I know I did the research on you a couple weeks ago when the show crashed. Have you written any books on UFOs?
Yes, I wrote 8 books about UFOs.
Wow, okay.
In Portuguese, I have to translate in English, so the people are gonna know me. One of the books was about UFO typology. The other one was about alien typology. The other one's about UFO crashes, and I have 2 about UFO crashes. The first one I wrote in 2002, and this one's a second edition in 2014. And I have 4 other books about UFO general subjects, cases and researches and stuff like that. But I wrote 8 books. I'm finishing my 9th book, and until the end of the year, one more.
Wow. I know how much time that can take just from people I talk to. Someone wanted to know, and I think this is actually a really good question. Helio, if I pronounce that right, wanted to know if the aliens spoke, or was it telepathy or anything like that? But if they did they speak in Portuguese?
Yes. As far as I know, the aliens speak the language of the country that he was there. We have all the Brazilian cases that have the interaction with aliens and human beings was in Portuguese. Telepathic or speaking, matter of fact, speaking is in Portuguese. I know the cases they're being speaking in Spanish when in Spain, in English when United States and England, something like that. But in Brazil is in Portuguese.
Isn't that something? I mean, that is.
Yeah.
I guess if they are, say, extraterrestrial, wherever they're coming from, if they're actually have the technology to get here, I guess they could just do about anything, really. And a lot of times when people have talked about communication, it's come down to the point where they talk about the planet, taking care of the planet, or, bad things can happen and all that. Has anything like that as far as you know, has anything ever been talked about like that?
Yeah, we have a case we call in Brazil case Caran, and the aliens they name it Caran, told to Herminio and Bianca, that was the witness of the case, that they had to spread, that human beings had to take care of the planet. So in Brazil it's the same, in Mexico, United States. When they have to say, they say to us that we have to take care of the planet.
Yeah, that really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're not doing such a good job at that, I don't think.
No, we're not.
Right.
We are not.
So you did that book or 2 books on UFO crashes, and one of the things that a skeptic will always bring up is oh, well, they made it all the way here, and yet they crash. What's that about? So how do you address that skeptic's remark?
Well, they are not perfect. They are much more. They have technology much better than ours, but they are not perfect. They cannot control a boat, lightning bolt that hit the UFO. They cannot avoid a terrestrial missile. They slip while driving the UFO. They're not perfect. It's simple like that. Many people think that aliens is like a perfect beings. They are not perfect, in my opinion. Just God, and they are not God.
How about that? All right. So, how, in general, this is one of the questions I sometimes ask. How do you think ufology is going in your country, and is there a direction that it's going in? And if so, what type of direction would you say it's going in?
Well, I think that the Brazilian ufology, we are doing our best. We're doing everything that we can. Oh, just have to move it just a little.
Oh, sorry, we only have 4 minutes, so
whatever. We're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to do. We're doing our best. We are looking for do a very, very good research, and I think that we have a lot to show the world. The Brazilian government don't care about the UFOs, but we have ufologists that do. So I think that we have a long path to go, but we're doing fine. We're doing fine.
Now, I know I asked you this question or a similar question earlier about Chile. Have they ever reached out to your government, as far as you know, for any of the sightings that they're researching?
No.
Never have?
No. They don't. No, never happened. Yeah. I wish, but never happened.
I think it's really great that they are putting these resources to work the way they do there. The last UFO sighting that they came out with ended up being actually a commercial jet, unfortunately, but it was just seen with a different type of technology, so it was a mistake, which is very unfortunate that they came out with that, and I'm hoping that it doesn't make them have to disband that CEFA. I hope they just keep continuing and trying, because everyone makes mistakes. It's just too bad they came out with it prematurely, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. The Chile, it's an example to all of the countries, because they do a very good job. It's a very serious job.
Yeah, that's what I've liked about them all along. That they take it seriously. There's not really the ridicule there, and they have all the branches of the government and police department, you name it. They're all helping them, working with them, and scientists.
Yeah.
I wish we would. It's not. I know there's a lot of things to spend money on, but they're not spending a lot of money on this, and maybe some other countries will follow suit.
Martin, the Brazilian government don't need to spend any money. We just wanted, when we were at the Ministry of Defense, we just said, they said we don't have money and personnel to help you. We said, okay, we don't need it. We're gonna do the research. We just need you to give us the material that you have. The sightings that you have, the reports of the pilots. We do all the let's say, dirty job, and give it to you and to society an answer, even inconclusive. We're gonna do the job. You just need your channel. That's all. don't need to pay us.
Wow. Wow, that was great that you have that ability to be able to do that. Well, hey, thanks so much. Now, are you able to give out your website or any place that someone can contact you? The magazine or anything?
Yeah, I have Facebook.
Right.
My fan page on Facebook is Thiago Ticchetti. You can find it. Thiago is ThiagoTicchetti. It's very difficult.
Well, I can put that in the.
But you can find it.
For the listener, I will put that in the show notes, so you'll be able to see that. All right. Hey.
Yes.
It's been great, and thank you so much for your patience and coming back to try a second time. I really appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you, Martin, for the opportunity to show a little about ufology in Brazil to your readers.
Very good. All right, you take care, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, everyone. So that's it for the show tonight. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll be back next week. We're going to have kind of a controversial show. I've had Ben Moss on in the past. You may know him from some of the UFO TV shows that he's been on. But Ben Moss asked me if he could talk about controversial subjects in the UFO field. And I said, absolutely, why not? So it should be interesting. So tune in next week, the same time, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be back with Ben Moss next week. Thanks so much for being here. If you're supporting the show, thanks so much. If you want to support the show, just go to podcastufo.com. And remember, we'll be back next week, and to keep your eyes to the sky.